Welcome back to Rewitched, a charmed 1998 rewatch journey. I'm your host, Jess Sabanko, and I can't wait to share my thoughts on one of my favorite shows with you. I'll be keeping these recaps spoiler-free and welcome fans, new and old, to join me on my journey here and on social media at Rewitched_pod on Instagram and TikTok. Currently, I'm on season 7. All right, so this week we're talking about season 7, episode 22, Something Wicca This Way Goes. So in my personal opinion, this is one of, if not the best finale in the series. The one that's really comparable to it, in my opinion, is All Hell Breaks Loose. So I think that with those two, they're really neck and neck. If I were to watch them both right in a row, some days I might pick this one, some days I might pick that one. All that is really just to say that I love this episode. I think it's a really great ending for the season, for the Zankou storyline, for the conflict with Darryl and Sheridan that's been going on for the last season and a half. In terms of our innocents and villains of the week, obviously our main villain is Zankou. We also have as conflict or antagonist the federal police force, Sheridan, and then in the innocent category we have our sisters as well as Sheridan a bit, because even though she is an antagonist to the sister, she's not really a bad guy. In terms of our overall storylines, first I'll cover the stuff with Sheridan and Darryl, and then I will get into the sisters and Zankou. So for Sheridan, early in this episode, we see that she has contacted Homeland Security. Agent Key shows up and she's kind of like, look, like these sisters are involved in all this sketchy stuff. 3 police officers, she brings up Andy, Inspector Rodriguez, and Inspector Davidson, either died or disappeared because of them. They've also done this with a lot of civilians, including their own sister Prue. So that's her first mention in this episode. And he's kind of like, yeah, like, is that all you have? And she's like, well, I also know that they put me in a coma. And he's like, no, that was Agent Brody and I was the one who told him to do that. And she's kind of like pissed at first, and he's like, look, the sisters are involved in the paranormal and that's what we want to figure out and go after, and you were getting in the way of that. And so she does ultimately agree that she wants to work with them to bring down the sisters. She does contact Darryl, yelling at him, and is like, you knew all about this, you kept it from me. If I had any proof, like, your ass would already be in trouble, but if you do anything to warn them, then it'll really be like bad for you. And at this point she was kind of like, who's calling you? Like, is it the sisters? He's like, no, it's Sheridan. Something's about to happen, but it's not my problem anymore. Then later on, Leo does show up again, appealing to him like he did earlier in the season. He's like, look, something really big is about to go down. I'm not asking for you to help us. What I'm asking is for you to not let anyone come in before the sisters can take care of it. We don't want that loss. And she was kind of like, I thought we were done. Like, we made this promise. He's like, I have to do it. We want this better future for our family, for our kids. That's what the sisters are all about. And I have to do what I can to help. And she's like, just promise this is the last time. And he does. And it is this moment of us really seeing who Darryl is as a character, right? Even though he has this conflict, even though he wants to be able to choose his family, he cares about the greater good. And it's something we've seen for Leo too. So kind of the parallels in their characters and their journeys this season is really highlighted in this episode. And I really love that moment of them coming together as 2 fathers who care about saving the world and having to make these really potentially dangerous decisions for the greater good. So I did really love that for him. In terms of the rest with Sheridan, we do see that she's the one who wants to be responsible for catching the sisters. So she volunteers to go into the manor, and they're kind of like, look, like, you're not ready for that. She's like, no, like, they'll let me in. They hate me, but like, I can get the proof. I can get them to use their powers on camera. And so they do agree to let her do it, which unfortunately does lead to her demise when she finds Zankou in the house and he throws an energy ball, which then leads to more police action, including them all getting ready to storm the manor. Everyone shows up outside just as the sisters are setting up to vanquish Zankou, and Agent Keys does see the sisters in the attic window and they're looking at him, and there's this direct contact between them before they go back to their plan. And after everything is finished, they're inside. He's looking around and they can't find anyone inside the house. There's no evidence of a bomb, but it looks obviously very destroyed. And Darryl's like, oh, like, thank God no one was in here. Like, aren't you glad I told you to wait? Because just moments after Darryl shows up and he's like, I wouldn't go in there just yet if I were you, all this smoke comes out of the house right as they were about to storm because an energy ball came through the roof from Zankou. And so he's like, oh, thank God no one was in there. And Keyes is like, no, like, the sisters were in here. I saw them. And if they'd gotten out, we would have seen it. And Darryl's kind of like, oh my God, like, please tell me there was another way. And then we do have that final moment between him and the sisters, which I will come back to at the end of this recap. So to get into the sisters and Zankou, we do see them at the beginning at magic school trying to figure out what's next, obviously picking up right where we left off last episode. They're like, what if he's already here? And Piper's like, no, like, that's not possible. And they're trying to think of like what their next plan should be, how they should go about getting the book back. And Zankou is already starting to look for the Nexus, which they quickly figure out is what he's after again. He has these demons digging up. They're like, why don't you just like use magic? He's like, no, like, it'll sense that and see it as a threat. Like, it's not good or evil. We have to naturally bring it out. He has this advisor throughout the episode who is constantly trying to get him to stay focused on the plan with the Nexus and not worry so much about the sisters, because the sisters are quick to realize that his hatred for them could be a distraction to him and help them serve their purpose. Because the first time they go back to the manor, they realize quickly that they're not able to touch the book anymore. Their loss of confidence has led to the book no longer recognizing them. And in that first confrontation with Zankou, Piper is hit by an energy ball. She is healed at magic school by Sandra the Elder, who then is like, look, you guys have to get the book back. You have to do the spell to banish the Suxin, which is Nexus backwards. It's a spell that was put in the book as a last resort in case there was ever a time where evil got hold of the Nexus. And they're like, yeah, but like, then good wouldn't have access to it either. Neither would we. And that's when they realize that the elders aren't necessarily confident that the sisters will survive this battle with Zankou. And this is where a lot of the idea of like, if Zankou is able to take in the Nexus, everything we've done in the last 7 years doesn't matter anymore. And Phoebe is the one to say like, I'm not okay with that. And they're like, well, what do we do? Like, he's gonna kill us too. And she says, well, if we're gonna go down, we're gonna go down fighting, and we're gonna do everything we can to take Zankou with us. So it is very much this episode, the sisters preparing for their potential death in an attempt to save the world, which this isn't the first time, but this is one of the most devastating moments of it, particularly with Piper's character, when we see the way that she talks to Leo about it and the way that they then go to Victor and she signs everything over to him, the house, their bank accounts, the club, the power of attorney for the boys. She's like, look, you have to do all this. And he's kind of like, no, Lo, like, I don't want to accept this. Are you telling me I'm never going to see you again? And Phoebe's the one who says, in this family, never say never. And then we see Piper's final moment saying goodbye to Wyatt and Chris, telling them to be good boys, hugging them, kissing them. It broke my heart for her to know that she's doing what she has to do, but that might mean giving up her family. And it makes me really sad. Like, I was crying during the episode. I'm tearing up a little bit now because Piper truly does love them more than anything, but knows that she has no choice but to save the world. Remaining a charmed one is something she has chosen over and over again, despite her conflicts with magic. And I really love her story in this episode and the way that we see her make that decision, but also the way that it obviously does have a big impact on her. Because even early in the episode, they're like, Piper, you're the only one that's still confident. And she's like, no, like, I'm just a good actor. I'm as scared as you guys. I'm as vulnerable as you guys. And the way that they then come up with their plans, because they start out like talking about all these old spells they've done, specifically Piper and Phoebe. They're like, remember in season 1 when we did the confidence spell, and going back to these old times and potential ways they could try to stop Zankou. That's when Paige is there with the whole magical community there to support them. And they're like, look, we're willing to distract Zankou so that you guys can get into the house, which was when they were unable able to touch the Book of Shadows, and they turn him into a pig. They humiliate him in front of the other demons in order to get him after them and distract him from the Nexus. Because the first time he tries to take it in, they are able to do a reversal spell from magic school, but that's not something they can keep doing over and over again. So as this is continuing on, the sisters are trying to figure out what's next, but unfortunately, Zankou has already come up with a plan to steal their powers. In their next confrontation, he takes Phoebe's powers and then is able to see that their plan, after they don't want to keep sending obviously the magical creatures, because in that battle both demons and creatures were lost, they need to team up with someone bad, and they get the idea of going to the Vampire Queen. But unfortunately, because Zankou now has the power of premonition, he knew that they were going to do that, get to her first. So when they show up at the manor, they're like, wait, where's the queen? He's like, oh, she betrayed you. Like, I already knew, ha ha ha. And then this time he gets Piper's powers and then hits her with her blowing up power. The sisters escape, and his advisor is kind of like, what the fuck? Like, you had the opportunity to kill them. And he's like, no, like, I want all three powers first. And so it's really Zankou's thirst for power that ultimately ends up being his downfall, because in that moment he could have taken out the sisters, gotten the Nexus, achieved his plan. But he's so desperate for gaining all the power he possibly can that it leads to his demise at the end of this episode, because even with 2 out of 3 powers gone, they can figure out something together. So they go back to magic school where Paige is calling for help and Piper's like, they're not coming, like, we're on our own with this. Leo bandages her up and he's kind of like, well, why don't we get Wyatt to heal you? She's like, no, we're not traumatizing my son any further. But then the idea that he could be traumatized by their death comes up, and she's like, look, we have to do what we have to do. So that's when they finally come up with the plan that they have to use something that luckily Leo taught Prue. And we as the audience aren't in on the plan at first, but we later find out that it's using astral projection. So Zankou arrives at magic school now that he's gotten it, because he did try to break in a little earlier but hadn't had enough power quite yet. So he finally is able to get in, and Piper's kind of like, oh, it took you long enough. And this is all a distraction game, because they start throwing things and then run into the other room where he's after them. He's about to get to Paige because they're like, Paige, like, get out of here, like, you can escape. And she's like, not without you guys. And he's like, oh, how sweet. And then throws the potion to take her powers. It doesn't work. They all kind of smirk at him and astral project out. He's confused at first. They're at the manor. They wake up in the living room. They run up to the attic. They're like, okay, like, we have to get this spell before Zankou finds us. They're saying the power of 3 will set us free for the very last time, as they point out. And then that's when they go over to the window because they hear all the sirens as the cavalry's approaching, and they have that eye contact moment with Keys. They're like, okay, he's gonna be here any second. That's when Zankou flames in, and he's like, ha ha ha, like, I got you guys, and sees they have the book. They start kind of fighting a little bit. They all orb out when he throws the energy ball that goes through the roof. They're in the basement. He's in the basement the next time we see them, and he's like, you have no chance of stopping me. The Nexus knows me. It's been inside me, which was a little bit sexual for no reason. And then he summons it again, but this is of course the sisters' plan. They want the Nexus to go into him so that they can take them out, 2 birds with 1 stone, as Phoebe said earlier in the episode, which was when Piper had pointed out, but we have to be really close to him. It's gonna kill us too. So they do the spell. Once it's inside of him, we see him turn red and all this like big explosion happen, the fire, the smoke outside. Seems that everyone is dead. So that's when the police all come in. Outside, we see Leo running up to the house. He's like, this is my house, this is my family, but he doesn't have ID, so the cops won't let him through. He starts walking back, and there's these 3 women standing there, and they're like, what's going on? Like, I hope no one died in there. And he's like, do I know you? And one of them steps forward and says, well, I hope so. We're married. And they kind of pull him over to this area by the bushes where the sisters glamour back into themselves. And that is when he's kind of like, what? Like, what's going on? And they're like, it was part of our plan for us to die. Everyone thinks we're gone. All the demons think we were vanquished with Zankou. The police think we died in this. The elders, everyone thinks we're gone. We don't have to be afraid anymore. We don't have to fight demons anymore. We can have that magical free life. So going back to Phoebe's wants earlier in the season of seeing a future without magic, even without the avatars back in season 6. And Phoebe says, now we can focus on preparing the next generation to eventually pick up where we left off. And Leo kind of smiles. He's like, okay, what do we do? And then they glamour themselves back into their new identities, as well as Leo into a new identity, and they walk off. This is when Darryl walks out, upset, worried that something's happened to the sisters. And then he spots the group of 4 and instantly realizes, and we see him kind of laugh and smile. And he's outside, just walked out of the door, and then we see the door close magically the way it always does in a finale. And it's such a beautiful moment. One, Darryl knowing that he's walking away from helping them, knowing that they're safe, knowing that they're no longer being pursued by the law, and hopefully that everyone thinks they're dead just like their plan was, and they can now live this normal life and just focus on their kids the same way that Darryl wants to live his normal life and focus on his kids. So this wrap up to all these storylines is really effective for me. I think the vanquish and conflict with Zankou in this episode was really strong. Like I said, this was just a really, really great fucking finale. I have 0 complaints with this episode. I really enjoyed it, and I also think it's one of the strongest episodes in the series. I will talk more about my overall thoughts on the season next week in my season wrap-up, but that is all I have for this one, and I hope you'll join me back next time.